My landlord thought he could bully me into silence. When I asked him to fix my heat in the middle of winter, he didn't send a repairman. He sent an eviction notice. What he didn't know was that I had been documenting everything, and I was about to use a law to make his entire apartment complex legally uninhabitable. If you've ever dealt with a landlord who thought they were untouchable, you're going to love this. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new here, and drop a comment telling me the worst thing a landlord has ever done to you. Because this story is about what happens when someone finally fights back the right way. I moved into the Riverside Apartments in late September. It wasn't luxury living, but it was affordable, close to work, and the apartment itself seemed fine during the walkthrough. The landlord, a man I'll call Mr. Shady, showed up in a wrinkled polo shirt and gave me the keys without much conversation. He had this dismissive energy, like he'd done this 1,000 times and couldn't be bothered with pleasantries. I didn't think much of it. I signed the lease, moved my furniture in, and settled into what I thought would be a quiet, uneventful year. For the first 2 months, everything was fine. I paid rent on time, kept to myself, didn't make noise. I was the kind of tenant landlords dream about. But then November hit, and with it came the cold. It started with a faint chill in the mornings. I'd wake up and feel the air biting at my skin, even though I was under 2 blankets. I checked the thermostat. It was set to 72, but the apartment felt closer to 55. I adjusted it. Nothing happened. I waited a day, thinking maybe the system just needed time to catch up, but by the 3rd morning, I could see my breath when I stepped out of bed. The heat wasn't working. I sent Mr. Shady an email. Polite, professional. I explained the issue, attached a photo of the thermostat displaying the temperature gap, and asked him to send someone out to take a look. I waited 2 days. No response. I sent a follow-up. Still nothing. By the end of the week, the temperature outside had dropped into the 20s, and my apartment felt like a refrigerator. I was sleeping in sweatpants, a hoodie, and socks, piling every blanket I own onto my bed just to make it through the night. I called him. It rang 4 times before he picked up. Yeah. His voice was flat, annoyed. Hi, Mr. Shady, it's me from Unit 12. I sent you a couple of emails about the heat. I got M. Okay, well, it's been over a week now and it's getting really cold in here. I was hoping you could send someone. I'll get to it when I get to it. I understand you're busy, but it's below freezing outside and... Look, I said I'll handle it. Stop blowing up my phone. He hung up. I stood there staring at my phone, feeling a slow burn of frustration crawling up my chest. I wasn't asking for anything unreasonable. This wasn't a cosmetic issue or a minor inconvenience. Heat in the winter is a basic habitability requirement. It's literally the law. But he didn't care. Another week passed. The temperature kept dropping. I bought a space heater, but it barely made a dent. My electric bill that month was going to be insane. I started spending more time at coffee shops and the library just to stay warm. I'd come home at night, dreading the cold that waited for me inside my own apartment. I felt trapped, powerless, and worse, invisible. I started researching tenant rights. I live in a state with strong protections, and I learned that landlords are required to provide heat during the winter months. If they don't, tenants have the legal right to withhold rent until the issue is resolved, or to pay for the repair themselves and deduct it from rent. But there's a process. You have to document everything. You have to give written notice. You have to follow the law to the letter, or the landlord can turn around on you. So I did exactly that. I drafted a formal letter. I cited the specific state statutes regarding habitability and landlord obligations. I documented every email I'd sent, every phone call, every ignored request. I included photos of the thermostat, timestamps, and a log of indoor temperatures I'd been recording with a digital thermometer. I stated clearly that if the heat was not repaired within 5 business days, I would be withholding rent in accordance with state law until the issue was resolved. I sent it certified mail. Signature required. 3 days later, I got a response. But it wasn't what I expected. Mr. Shady didn't send a repairman. He didn't apologize. He didn't even acknowledge the heat issue. Instead, he sent me a 30-day notice to vacate. The notice claimed I was being evicted for multiple lease violations, excessive noise complaints, unauthorized alterations to the unit, and failure to maintain cleanliness standards. Every single claim was fabricated. I had never received a noise complaint. I hadn't altered anything. My apartment was clean. This was retaliation, plain and simple. He was trying to scare me into shutting up. I sat on my couch, holding that notice, and something inside me shifted. I wasn't scared. I was angry. Because here's the thing about people like Mr. Shady. They rely on intimidation. They bank on the fact that most tenants don't know their rights, don't have the time or energy to fight back, and will just fold under pressure. He thought I'd panic, pack my things, and disappear quietly. He thought wrong. I wasn't going anywhere. And if he wanted to fight, I was going to give him one he'd never forget. I started that night. I didn't just focus on my apartment anymore. I expanded my scope. If Mr. Shady was running my unit this poorly, I was willing to bet the rest of the complex wasn't much better. So I started looking. I walked the entire property. Common areas, hallways, stairwells, laundry rooms, outdoor spaces. And what I found was a gold mine of neglect. The main stairwell on the north side of the building had exposed electrical, wiring running along the wall, barely covered by a loose panel that was hanging by a single screw. I took photos, close-ups, wide shots showing the context. I recorded video of myself gently pushing the panel, showing how easily it moved and how much of the wiring was visible. The shared laundry room in the basement was worse. There was visible black mold creeping up the walls in two corners, spreading for what looked like a long-term water leak that had never been addressed. The air down there smelled damp and sour. I took photos of the mold, the water stains, the warped drywall. I recorded the smell in my notes. The balconies were a safety nightmare. I tested the railings on 3 different units, including mine, and found that 2 of them wobbled dangerously when you applied pressure. One had visible rust eating through the bolts. I took videos showing how much the railings moved, how unstable they were. I could easily imagine someone leaning against one and it giving way entirely. The fire escapes were in even worse shape. Rust, loose bolts, steps that felt like they might collapse under weight. I documented everything. Over the course of a week, I compiled a list of over 20 building code violations. I cross-referenced everything with the city's municipal code, noting the specific statute numbers for each violation. I organized the photos and videos into a clean, professional folder structure. I wrote a detailed cover letter explaining that I was a concerned tenant reporting serious health and safety hazards that posed immediate risks to all residents. And then I filed a complaint. I submitted it online to both the city's Building Code Enforcement Division and the Health Department. I included every photo, every video, every relevant code citation. I made it impossible to ignore. I filed it the day after I received the eviction notice. The timing wasn't an accident. 2 days later, I was sitting in my apartment, still freezing, when I heard a commotion outside. I looked out the window and saw 2 unmarked white vans parked in the lot. A moment later, a team of 4 inspectors in high-visibility vests stepped out, carrying clipboards, cameras, and measuring tools. Code enforcement had arrived. I watched from my window as they moved methodically through the property. They started with the stairwells, then moved to the laundry room, then the balconies. Every time they found something, they stopped, took photos, made notes, and slapped a bright orange sticker on the wall. Violation in bold black letters. Other tenants started coming out, watching, whispering. No one knew what was happening, but everyone could feel the tension in the air. The inspector spent hours going through every floor, every common area, every corner of the property. I stayed in my apartment, heart pounding, watching the slow, methodical destruction of Mr. Shady's carefully constructed negligence. And then he arrived. I heard him before I saw him. His voice carried across the parking lot, sharp, angry, defensive. He was yelling at one of the inspectors, demanding to know who had filed the complaint, what gave him the right to show up unannounced, how this was harassment. The lead inspector, a middle-aged woman with steel gray hair and the energy of someone who had seen this exact routine 100 times, didn't even flinch. She just stood there, arms crossed, letting him vent. We finally stopped to breathe. She spoke. Mr. Landlord, we've identified multiple serious violations on this property. Fire hazards, health hazards, structural safety concerns. You're going to receive a full report. But I need to inform you now that based on what we found, we're issuing a red tag for this building. The color drained from his face. A what? A red tag. This property is being deemed unsafe and uninhabitable until all major violations are corrected and re-inspected. You are required to cease collecting rent immediately, and you cannot re-rent any units until we clear the property. He sputtered. You can't. Do you have any idea how much this is going to cost? That's not my concern. My concern is the safety of your tenants. You'll receive the full violation report within 48 hours. You have 30 days to make the necessary repairs and schedule a re-inspection. If you fail to comply, you'll face additional fines and potential legal action. She handed him a thick manila envelope, turned on her heel, and walked back to her van. Mr. Shady stood there, frozen, holding the envelope like it was a live grenade, and then his eyes scanned the parking lot and landed on me. I was standing in my doorway now, arms crossed, watching. He knew. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The look on his face said it all. Rage, disbelief, betrayal. He thought he had all the power. He thought I was just another tenant he could push around. He was wrong. He stormed toward me, his face red, veins bulging in his neck. You did this, he shouted, jabbing a finger at me. You called them. You're trying to ruin me. I didn't move. I kept my voice calm, steady. I reported safety violations. That's my right as a tenant. This is retaliation. You! No, I interrupted. Retaliation is when a landlord tries to evict a tenant for requesting legally required repairs, which is exactly what you did to me. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He knew I had him. You're going to regret this, he hissed. I don't think so. He turned and stormed off, clutching the envelope, muttering under his breath. I went back inside, closed the door, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. The fallout was immediate and devastating for him. The red tag meant that the entire complex was legally uninhabitable. Mr. Shady couldn't collect rent from anyone until the violations were fixed. That meant he was losing tens of thousands of dollars every single month the building sat in violation. And the repairs weren't going to be cheap. The electrical work alone was going to cost a fortune. The mold remediation, the structural reinforcements, the balcony repairs. It was going to bleed him dry. As for my eviction notice, null and void. You can't evict someone from a property that's been deemed uninhabitable. In fact, the city's housing authority reached out to me directly and informed me that I was entitled to stay rent-free until the heat was repaired and the property was cleared for occupancy again. Rent-free. I stayed in that apartment for another 2 months without paying a dime. Mr. Shady finally sent a repair crew to fix the heat. Not because he wanted to, but because he had no choice. The city was breathing down his neck. The repairs to the building took months. Every day that passed was another day he lost money. I didn't gloat. I didn't rub it in. I just lived my life, warm and comfortable, knowing that I had done something most tenants only dream of. I had held a slumlord accountable. When I finally moved out, on my own terms, at the end of my lease, I left the apartment spotless. I didn't owe him anything. Not rent, not an apology, not a second of my time. I ran into one of the other tenants on my way out. She thanked me. She said that the repairs had made the building livable again, that she and others had been dealing with the same neglect for years, but never knew they could do anything about it. That's the thing about people like Mr. Shady. They thrive in silence. They count on tenants being too scared, too tired, too uninformed to fight back. But all it takes is one person who refuses to stay silent. One person who documents everything. One person who knows their rights and isn't afraid to use them. I didn't burn his building down. I didn't vandalize anything. I didn't even raise my voice. I just used the law, and the law was more than enough. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to stand up to someone who thought they had all the power? What did you do? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. And if you enjoyed this, Hit that subscribe button because I've got plenty more stories about people who got exactly what they deserved. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.